It's noon here in Ventnor City, New Jersey, and our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And this is CarEdge Live for Tuesday, February 4th, with your hosts, me, Ray, and, well, that good-looking dude wearing a CarEdge pullover, Mr. Zach. How are you today, handsome?
Happy Tuesday, y'all. Doing great. Today's show is brought to you by CarEdge.com. Get the best deal, save thousands, get 100% free access to your exclusive car buying toolkit. Includes pricing data, dealer offers, and negotiation guides tailored for you. Check it all out back at CarEdge.com. And yes, if you scroll down just a little bit, dealer invoice price, our car buying service, sell your car. So many good things going on back in CarEdge land. Dad, the big story this morning, young people refuse to buy vehicles. There was an editorial piece that came out in Automotive News this morning.
Yes.
In our opinion, automakers finally heeding dealers' pleas for affordable options. You and I have been talking about affordability for years. We know many people have been listening and thinking the same thing themselves. There's a shocking component to all of this, which is data suggests, and we're going to come down to the bottom here, data suggests that the mix of consumers who are actually purchasing vehicles is skewing older and older. This sentence right here, paired with some of the other data I have queued up for today's show, it really gives us a moment of pause. It reads, and in a worrying long-term trend, the age mix of buyers is rising, with those under 35 now making up a much smaller mix of overall buyers. One more piece of data to put on everyone's radar. Teenagers are less likely to be licensed compared to past decades. We've seen a decline in those that are of age to get a driver's license actually choosing to get a driver's license. Could these things be correlated? Young people refuse to buy cars. What say you, Papa Shevska?
Well,
resident young person.
I would say this. Those young people apparently don't need us. They're not using CarEdge because they're not buying cars. And the sad reality to that statistic where the age of buyers is rising. Well, what that also means, and I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, but what that also means in many, many cases, it's the last car some of those people are ever going to buy because they're going to die before they need another. Okay? It was like the old joke about Buick customers. You never got to sell them a second one, okay, because they were so old when they bought the first one. And so if that doesn't scare the industry, I don't know what will. Because if young people have taken themselves basically out of the market for two reasons. One, they haven't bothered to learn to drive. They don't care to learn to drive. And since they can't drive, they don't want to buy a car. So if we can't convince young people to want to drive and want to buy a car, ultimately the percentage of people who will be in the market will be even a smaller percentage than it's ever been, because those who have bought will be dying off and there ain't no replacements coming through the ranks. That's scary.
It really does feel like a potential seismic shift for the auto industry. You have threats from a variety of sides, right? Affordability is a threat to the auto industry. We know that. Obviously, we've seen automakers who pushed really heavily into electric vehicles, which are more expensive for them to produce, to be in really dire situations right now. Look at Volkswagen, look at Ford, look at Stellantis. So affordability, business strategies around that, that's a threat. You also have the threat of autonomous vehicles. That's another big threat. Why do you need to own a car when you could just have a ride hail from a robo-taxi? That's Tesla's vision, right? Tesla seems to pretty much, when they have a vision, they go and figure it out. That's another threat. And then you have this threat, Dad, which is a new generation of would-be customers are not customers. They're not even taking the steps to get a driver's license. And your existing customer, your ICP, your ideal customer profile, might be buying their last car ever.
Yes.
Those are three major threats, systemic threats to the auto industry.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Because I don't really know, but that's never ever stopped me from having an opinion about something. It's what makes me so charming. When Uber first came out, who were the first people to use that service? And I'm going to guess younger people.
Probably younger people, I imagine, typically skew to be more early adopters than older people who are more established in their life. Sure.
Yeah. So younger people have gotten used to things like Uber and Lyft and are thinking to themselves, even if they come out with robo taxis, what the hell do I need to buy a car for? Why do I need to know how to drive? The robo taxi can do it. So it's I would think people my age were slower to adapt to things like Uber and Lyft. The concept of, I don't know, setting up an account with somebody that they had access to my credit card so that I could go on an app and say, okay, I need a ride now. That took me years to get there to be willing to do that. Where I believe younger people, because they've been raised with applications and computers and cell phones and all that their entire lives, it just became a natural extension to them well, this is how we operate today.
I wonder if another factor in this, Dad, is auto loan delinquency and going bad on your car loans. We know, and I'll pull up some data on this. We know the blue line here that you're looking at, folks, you're looking at serious 90 plus day delinquency on auto loans broken down by age here. And this goes back all the way to 2007 and it ends in 2023. So it's directional. It's not really that up to date. This blue line at the top, let's just zoom in on this for a second. You can see that nice now. That blue line, what that's showing you, whoops, come on back here. What that's showing you is that those that are the youngest have the highest levels of auto loan delinquency. And those that are the oldest, typically or older, have lower levels of auto loan delinquency. So I wonder if there's a little bit of feeling burned here by previously having purchased a vehicle and then the level of disinterest to actually go purchase another vehicle. That's what this data also suggests to me.
And why would that be? Well, okay, there's a couple reasons. Auto payments, loan payments are higher than they've ever been.
Yep.
Okay, which makes it harder for young people who are at the beginning of their earning stage, which means they're not the ones with the $100,000 a year jobs. Okay, no. They might be making $3,000-$4,000 a month. So if they have to make a choice between making that car payment on time, or I don't know, picking up a Big Mac or whatever else, if they're going with let's party. They're not going with let's make the car payment. And it's not as if they know what cash looks like, because it's all on an app on their phone. Here, let me just touch the phone to whatever, and it's going to pay for it. Whether or not I actually run out of money in that account is a different story altogether. But there's no semblance of understanding budgeting and how money works and whether or not you actually have any. If everything is just accessible, well, let me just tap my phone to it. And apparently my phone is somehow going to pay for it until, well, it can't, because I've run out of money. So I just think that, yes, younger people are always going to skew higher for delinquencies because they don't have the income to support everything it is that they want to buy, because everything's just a tap of the phone. They have no concept of how much money they really have or don't have.
So again, folks, the lead story this morning, young people refuse to purchase vehicles, comes from new data that says those under 35 now make up a much smaller mix of overall car shoppers. You can see the data points just above it as well. The average new car price per month getting up to $756 per month in December of 2024 compared to $590 per month just 5 years earlier in December 2019. We know all of the data that shows how expensive new cars have become, and for a variety of reasons creates a real threat to the auto industry. One of those threats being you're literally aging out your customer, and young people are refusing to purchase.
You need replacements. Okay. Your customers are either aging out and dying, or
Yeah.
they're aging out and they can just no longer drive.
Yeah.
So you need to replace them with people that are 35 and younger, so that you can count on them for the next 50 years. And if that segment is growing smaller and smaller, then the industry is doing something wrong. That would be the segment, at least in my mind, as an industry, that would be the segment you'd want to grow, because that's your future. You're right now, you're selling to your past.
Yeah.
Okay. And in many cases, the past is much closer to the end than anything. So
Yeah.
they've got to figure out how to get these younger people in the market. And with the advent of robo taxis, Uber, Lyft, rideshare, all that stuff, I don't see how that's going to happen. I
I
mean,
will.
you don't
Yeah.
own a car.
No.
Okay. You live in a major city that has public transportation. When you can't get somewhere by public transportation, what's the first thing you do? Let me order an Uber. You don't think, damn, I
No.
need a car.
Nope.
No. And just let me check. How old are you?
That being said, Dad, there is an entire swath of the United States that is not in a dense, high public transit area. And
Yes.
in those areas, having and owning a vehicle is absolutely a necessity. And so what's damning in this information is that automakers know that they're going to lean into that for decades to come. You're still pricing out an entire new generation of consumer who wants to be your customer. And again, just reinforces how dire the affordability situation is. That being said, folks, if we can help you, if you are going to purchase a vehicle, you have to be educated, informed, and empowered. That's why we built CarEdge.com. Especially click on research right here. Okay. Everything you need to research before you purchase a vehicle is back here on CarEdge.com/research. Please, please, please go avail yourselves, of all this great information, because if you are going to do it, definitely want to make sure you don't get taken advantage of. Let's switch gears, Pops. I want
Yes.
to come here to the chat, and then after the chat, we've got another story that's very important that we covered today from Baron. Thank you, Baron. BS. School should be teaching about finance and loans. Parents as well. Instead, they teach garbage. Most can't do grade level math. Older folks learned. All right. What do you think about this, Dad? We've had actually like people from higher education institutions and high schools reach out to us to do car buying courses for their pupils. So maybe there is some efficacy to that.
There definitely is. There's probably some schools out there that do have some courses on a high school level for finance and economics, so that perhaps 16, 17-year-old kids can begin to understand
Yeah.
what the real world is like. But yeah, there is a dearth of education towards that goal. We have tried our best to help when those who have come to us and asked, can we have like deal school? And there was a time when we actually charged for deal school. We made it free for learning institutions. So we're trying to do our best, but let's face it, how many people are we going to reach? I think it was 20 million over the last two months of the year, from something I read. But the fact is, there's 330 million people in this country. So for us to reach 20 million, that's nothing. Okay, that is such a small percentage. And so yes, we need as a nation to make it important to teach people basic economics.
No, it's basic. It's basic personal finance,
okay.
basic personal finance.
I remember being taught. You would have no idea about this today, but I remember when I was younger being taught how to write a check and how to balance a checking account. Okay, how to keep track of every check that you wrote. It was an important thing to learn. People have no idea what a check is.
Yeah, what's a check?
Yeah.
Balance. What are you balancing on?
Well,
checking account?
Yeah,
what's a checking account?
That's so when you tap your phone, there's actually some money behind it. Okay. but I had to learn that when I was 17, 18 years old, because I had a checking account, I had a savings account. If you wanted to buy something, I didn't have a credit card, I had a check.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we've kind of lost our way to a degree. Yeah, I understand you can go online and you can check your balances online, and the old joke is that, well, I still have checks, so I must have money. The same applies today. I mean,
Yeah.
I tapped my phone, apparently it worked.
Well, Dad, again, the big, big, big scary news for the auto industry and for dealers that listen to this, and quite frankly, for all of us that care about, I don't know, making a better car buying experience, there might not be a car buying experience, is what comes to mind. We have fewer young people getting their driver's license, and we have fewer young people purchasing vehicles, and we have an aging out customer who might be buying their last Buick and then saying sayonara. So that's the landscape. That's what the data is suggesting. And quite frankly, as a young entrepreneur, Dad, who's built CarEdge, gives me some pause.
Yeah.
Like, wait, we're building CarEdge? I mean, to be very clear, my dad was referencing a LinkedIn post I did the other day, 20 million YouTube views, 2 million website visitors, and over 10,000 new cars purchased through CarEdge.com in November and December out of the 2.7 million new cars purchased. So the market is still massive. We're going to build a business in this space for decades to come. And it's still a damning implication or mark on this industry to say you're losing out on the next generation that was supposed to replace those customers who are passing away.
I remember before you turned 16, when you were allowed, I think you had to be 15 and a half years old, and you could go get a learner's permit.
Yep.
I mean, the day that
Yeah.
you were 15 and a half years old, it was like, can we go over to motor vehicle so I can get my learner's
I went with Mom. Yep. I went with Mom. And she let me drive home too, which was wild. And I did a good job.
But she knew you'd be good at it. When I was a kid, the minute that became available, it was like, I got to get my driver's license. And today it's like kids are, if I get a driver's license, I get a driver's license. It's no problem. I'll call an Uber. So it is the intensity attached to reaching a certain age and being able to get a driver's license has gone away. It doesn't exist at the same level that it had been. And really, long term, that's a problem. Now, maybe in the future world that Elon and others see of robo taxis and things of that nature, maybe it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Maybe, but
in today's paradigm, when you have all these automakers set up the way they are, all the dealers set up the way they are, it's a major existential threat to this industry. Absolutely is. And again, the data that we reviewed today, I think frames that. Dad, I want to pull up another comment from Baron that might be driving some of the lack of sales to a younger generation. Thank you, Baron. Baron says, adopt the European Union's dealer model and thrive. Over there, you don't have dealers, you have agents, agencies. So there's a different approach. There's a different way to purchase vehicles that obviously could resonate here in the United States or could resonate to a younger generation. We have here from Ed. Thank you, Ed. We really appreciate. Ray and Zach, I'm 63 and on disability. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing some of that with us. We appreciate the kind contribution. And my wife even works for a Ford dealer, and we doubt we will ever own another car. The payments are just too high. Wow.
And that's why 85% of the population doesn't feel as if they can participate in the new car market. And so here's Ed, who's 63, and let's assume his wife was, unless he was robbing the cradle, let's assume his wife is somewhere around the same age or close to it. They're looking at it and they go, we can't buy it. We can't buy it. And that's a vast majority of the population that looks at it that goes, I can't do it anymore. How do you justify an average new car payment of $756 a month?
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know how. Well, obviously, the vast majority of Americans can't do that. It's a rather small percentage of people who can do that.
Absolutely.
And that's been the whole thing I've been screaming about for years, is that you can't expect to maintain your sales rate if you keep making the pot you're trying to sell to smaller and smaller. And so that's what's happened.
I wanna bring awareness though. Again, this is the work that we do day in and day out. CarEdge.com/research. Cars with the best resale values, least expensive cars to insure, least expensive cars to maintain, least expensive or cars with the worst resale value, most expensive cars to insure. Come spend some time in our free research center. Here, let's view the insurance rankings, for example. Or actually, Dad, let's view the maintenance costs, for example. Like,
Yes,
come over here and dig into this data, folks. This is the information that can help you if you are going to move forward, make a smart decision, financial decision. And it is free, and it is our passion to empower and inform as many people as possible with this information, because we recognize there's still 50 million people that are going to buy cars this year. I
yes,
want to pull up
between
one
you
other
and you.
comment here,
Yes,
which is
yes.
from Igor. February is going to be a very slow month. So if you are looking for a deal, do it in February, especially towards the end of the month. We've been talking about this ad nauseum. Yes, February is the slowest month of the year. Typically, either January or February are the slowest months of the year for new and used car dealers. It is a great time to take advantage of the fact that there's pain in this industry. We are 4 days into February. Our business, CarEdge, we help customers buy cars. Our business grows when more people buy cars. February's slow, folks, even for us. So there is definitely going to be pressure on these dealers in the month of February, and you can leverage. You can use that as leverage in your negotiation. You're empowered. You know your time in the market. There's no shame in that. Take advantage of it.
Absolutely. And to know when the pain points are for dealers, that's the best time. And what we will always keep you up to date on that. We promise.
All right, we've got then from Chloepo. Thank you, Chloepo. How is the industry making record profits?
The profit margins on the vehicles that they had been building prior to now accepting the fact that they need to listen to their dealers, who need to listen to their customers, who are saying we need more affordable vehicles. So many of the manufacturers have decided to bring back lower price point vehicles, which have lower profit margins. So you will see moving forward that many of these manufacturers, their profit margins are going to drop, but they'll be able to maintain the profit that they need because their sales will have gone up to make up for that.
And we are starting to see dealer margin compression as well. So we're seeing car dealers make less. They're still making a ton of money, but making less per vehicle sold. So I wouldn't say actually we are experiencing record profits. We were experiencing record profits 2 years ago and been elevated, but they are coming back down to earth for I think everyone involved. Now, Dad, we need to cover, there's so many stories, but we're going to cover this one. Tariffs. We talked about tariffs yesterday.
Yes.
Both countries, north and the south of us here in the United States, Canada and Mexico, both tariffs have been postponed for 30 days. So there's a huge impact on the auto industry there. We now have no tariffs on our partners, our trade partners to the north and to the south. So that is a good sign and good news for automakers and automotive suppliers.
Yeah. Okay. And if you're an automaker, just between you and me, just between the two of us, how is it that you plan for the future when you have no idea what the future holds? When the threat of tariffs can come back at any moment. I mean, how do you actually plan when the whole thing is discombobulated? It is to me it's frightening because you don't know from 1 minute to the next what's going to happen. So how do you plan your business moving forward when at any point in time you could be hit with tariffs or maybe not? I think I don't know. I think as a manufacturer, you need a tad bit more stability than that so that you can really plan for the future.
Now, Barron's came out and they have their research. They're suggesting that the tariffs, if they were to go into effect and stay implemented, would increase new car prices by anywhere from 8 to 10%. And when the average transaction price for a new car is about $50,000, that's a $5,000 increase in price. We quoted numbers yesterday from Bloomberg at $3,000.
Yeah.
So again, there are no tariffs that are impacting car production or supply production right now. And if there were to be tariffs, you could anticipate, you're looking a little dark there, Dad. All right, you're coming back. There he is. And if there were to be tariffs, you would anticipate 8 to 10% increase in prices. It is highly volatile, highly fluid, like we talked about yesterday, and needed to make an acknowledgement of that today because yesterday's video was talking all about what the impacts of tariffs would be. And here you go today. There are no longer tariffs implemented against our trade partners in Canada and Mexico, and it felt worthy of mentioning. Now, another story I want to bring up is Credit Acceptance Corporation. They are one of these subprime credit providers, loan providers. They came out with their most recent quarterly earnings data, and they made a boatload of money. However, digging into the details, and I'll zoom in on this here, Credit Acceptance Corporation increased their loan loss provisions by $127.5 million in the most recent quarter at the end of 2024. Dad, that loan loss provisions, this happened after the great financial crisis and the CFPB was introduced. Financial institutions have to set aside money on their balance sheet for loans that they no longer expect to actually come to fruition and get repayment on. We're up to an increase of $127.5 million. So record profits for Credit Acceptance Corporation, and a material swing in how much money they're expecting to not actually come back to them from loans that are not going to be paid off. We continue to see auto loan delinquencies, repossessions, things like that go through go sky high.
There's gold in them there bad credits, folks. That's like the gold rush of the 1800s, for goodness sake. It is so painfully obvious that they can make so much money lending money to people with poor credit and still set aside $127 million for loans that they don't think potentially will never get paid off. Apparently that must be a pretty decent business to go into if you're writing loans on the right people.
Yeah, every once in a while I think, oh man, my dad and I on this crusade to educate folks, wrong business. We should have just given subprime auto. No, I mean, it's terrible. It's a different business. Obviously, it's not what we're passionate about, but you look at Drive Time, which has been incredibly profitable for Carvana. You look at this with Credit Acceptance Corporation. I mean, these are just profit-making machines, and those loan loss provisions are leading indicators for what's going to happen in the future. And they've been increasing loan loss provisions. And it's not just them. CarMax Auto Finance is doing it. Capital One. Everywhere we look, Santander, everyone is increasing their loan loss provisions, expecting more and more auto loans to not actually get paid off, which is just kicking the can down the curb. That being said, we do get to see this information quarters earlier than when it actually manifests itself in obviously those delinquencies and bankrupt repossessions.
Yeah, it goes back to what we spoke about earlier, and that is teaching kids in high school the value of credit and the value of understanding, creating a budget, saving money, understanding money. It all goes back to that. We need to do a much better job in educating younger people in this country as they're going through school. So
then an ask of our community, if you know someone who may end up purchasing a vehicle, selling a car, getting auto insurance, things like that, tell them about the YouTube channel, tell them about CarEdge, ask them to Google search us. That is obviously what we're passionate about and continue to be passionate about. So let's spread the word. Speaking of spreading the word, Dad, you mentioned the 20 million YouTube views. For those of you that aren't connected with us over on LinkedIn and you want to know like kind of the behind the scenes, the business side of CarEdge, you're more than welcome to. I had this post a week ago, Dad, talking about the incredible end of the year that our team experienced. And there's us too. So if you're interested in learning behind the scenes about the business, you can go over to LinkedIn. My name is Zach Shefska. There it is on the screen. My dad's Ray Shefska. I post fairly often about what we're building here, and it's really exciting to share that with the community. It's transparent, it's open, it's honest. There's no smoke and mirrors. We've got here, Dad, from Barron. Thank you, Barron. A smart dealer would sponsor personal finance assemblies. They would get their names out there and make customers. I 100% agree with this.
Absolutely.
100% agree.
Yeah, suck those kids in before they can actually drive.
I had no clue what you were going to say there, but that went well. Yeah, suck those kids in, folks. Let's get them in the door and let's give them lessons on
Yeah.
financial responsibility. I 100% agree. I
Yes.
think this is why Edmonds has been so successful for decades. They get people in with the research and the knowledge, and it's super valuable. Why don't car dealers do it? I don't know. Makes a lot of sense.
Because they figured out other ways to make money
They
without
make a boatload of money in
without
other ways.
without
Yeah,
having to suck those young kids in. They just
exactly.
suck the cash out of the older folks that show up.
They absolutely do. All right, folks, that's today's show. Thank you for
May
tuning in for
may
another
I say
episode of
one
Car
last thing?
Edge
Uh,
Live.
Apparently, car dealerships are just sucking machines, and they have figured out.
That's today's episode of Car Edge Live. Jesus, Dad. It's today's episode of Car Edge Live. We're back tomorrow with more information at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Matthew, we really appreciate it, Dad.
What? Well, I'm being good. What do you know? They're like vacuum cleaners for cash. That's all. Jeez.
We appreciate y'all, Dad. I love you so much. And Ray, the only way to plan for tariffs, 100% made in the USA. Maybe that's what's happening for these automakers.
Yeah, and that's still going to raise prices, ladies and gentlemen, because we know it costs more to build the stuff here. Because you have to pay the workers more. So either way, prices are going up, ladies and gentlemen.
Prices are going up. Hey, I'm not a wuss. I was just trying to be funny. That's all. I was trying to be funny. I love my dad. This is our rapport. Pops, I got to comment. The lighting today for you a little off.
I don't know what's going on.
I know, but with the red sweater, then your red face, it's kind of.
Yes, I have no idea.
You look nice, Dad.
Well, thank you. I feel nice. I don't know if I feel as nice as I look, but what can I tell you?
We're back here tomorrow, folks. Appreciate y'all.
Yep, we'll see you here tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.